Hi everyone, this video is on organizing your practice. And I apologize that I haven't made this video before now. I've received many emails from people with questions like, what do I play? When is it time to move on? Or, when is it time to learn vibrato? So this will be a tremendous help for those of you who are studying on your own. And it will also help those of you who have a teacher and you do have an agenda to follow, but still find it challenging to structure your own daily practice. And then, of course, there are those of you who are very autodidactic and who are able to take all the information from external sources and make practice lists and schedules for yourself. But you may be wondering if you're on the right track and if you're covering all the bases. So that's what this video hopefully will accomplish, is to make sure that you are able to create an effective practice routine for yourself, that you are staying, on the right trajectory to mastering violin playing. So I started by making a list, and I've given it a very erudite sounding name, a hierarchical rubric for developing technical skill on the violin. And this list is a progression of skills as they're introduced in my own teaching materials, as well as the Suzuki repertoire and popular early etude books like Wolfart and Mazas. Now keep in mind, this is not in a concrete order. Okay, if all the experienced teachers made this same kind of list, there would be variance, but there would be basic agreement as to what constitutes beginning, intermediate, and advanced skill. And I will be tweaking this, I'm sure throughout the years of my career. And also keep in mind, we don't learn things in a strict linear order. Okay, we're always introducing concepts and skills in clusters. So this list is to be used as a reference point and help make sure you're not omitting important skills before learning more advanced ones. And a good example would be vibrato. That's the skill that many beginners are very eager to learn. So, this list will help ensure that you're properly laying the groundwork for being able to learn vibrato. And note that I have printed in red when it's advisable to begin beginning shifting in vibrato exercises, but I actually have vibrato listed way down on the second page where I think it's appropriate to start learning vibrato in earnest. So many of these items on the list are specific techniques like spiccato or 1-octave major scale, and other items listed serve as mile markers for what skills are expected at different stages of learning. Like in the advanced beginning stage, it's expected that the player is able to maintain a clear tone when crossing strings in faster tempos, or able to maintain straight bow strokes. So obviously when a technique is introduced for the first time, it's not expected that you're able to master it. It's just this is the time to start training for it. So within a given level, in the beginning level or advanced beginning level, it's okay to move through the list, but I don't suggest trying to learn techniques in subsequent levels until you have a fairly solid grasp of the techniques of each level. Also, there's no one-size-fits-all, in terms of a timeline for moving from one level to another. So it may be 6 months for some people to a couple of years for other people. What's important is just that you are building good, solid technical skills on the violin. And now we're continuing with the what of your practice. So this perhaps is one of the most important steps, and this is where you're really going to learn how to become your own teacher. So this will require some effort on your part, but it's gonna pay off. So this is where you make your master list, your database of warm-ups and exercises that you will use to train the techniques that I mentioned from the technical skill development list. So for instance, if I look at level 1, let's say I'm a beginner, and finger action, lifting and dropping from bass knuckles. Okay, well, if you've watched my video or you've also read maybe Simon Fisher's Basics book, and you'll know that finger taps, a great way to train finger action and build strength. So write down on your list, and you can write down, you can have a column just for warm-ups, And you can do this in your own programs, or you can even get a notebook, a notebook and with notebook paper and write in it. But this would be a good warm-up. There's all kinds of warm-ups that you will do forever, and this is one of those. Okay, so you would write this down, or you could write down left hand, and also write down left hand pizzicato, where you work on just really pulling the finger back quickly, that lift, working on that lift. Or you may be to the point where you're down working on kind of different kinds of bow strokes, and you see hooked bowings. Okay, and we have a hooked bowing in minuet, the minuet number 1. Okay, now you can just work on that in the context of that piece of music, or you can create an exercise for yourself and put it on your master list. Okay, and this is something you can always practice. You don't have to just wait until you have a piece with a hooked bowing in it. This is a technique to have in your bag of techniques. So you could play a scale with that opening figure. So you could play a D major scale, down, up, up. Or you could play on an open string, the same thing, or you could vary it. You could have down bow hooks followed by up bow hooks. Rest. Rest. So I just made those up kind of the spur of the moment, but write those down. Okay, so when you think of an exercise, write it down. When you come across an exercise in your readings, write it down. When you come across an exercise from one of my videos, write it down. And then write down the technique that it helps train for. All right, so once you build this list of warm-ups and exercises, then you want to have another list. Okay, and this is going to help with repertoire. So a portion of your practice will be with warm-ups and exercises, and a portion will be working on your repertoire. And some people skip the warm-ups and skip the exercises and just go to the pieces. Okay, you're really doing your training when you do the exercises, because you're not using music. You're able to focus and concentrate just on technique, really, really working on skill development. That's where you're going to get better faster, and that's what your master list is going to help you do. So you also, though, want to be able to have kind of a menu of ways to practice your repertoire, and that's where your practice techniques come in. So download that page. We'll take a look at that. This is a list of ways to practice your pieces, and several of them are general approaches to practice, like play very slowly or play with right hand only, and some are more tailored to practicing difficult fast passages, like add and vary accents to 16th note passages. Now, I describe many of these techniques in the videos here on Violin Lab. And on the video page, I have 2 headings under categories called Practice Techniques and Exercises and Technique Studies. So by clicking on those, you can reference videos that demonstrate both items on this page, this Practice Techniques page, as well as exercises that you can add to your master list. And we can, as a community, grow this list. So if there's something that works for you, if you have a great practice technique that I don't have on the list, you can email me. Now that you have practice techniques for repertoire, you have your master list of warm-ups and exercises, and now you're going to practice. You're going to make your daily schedule. Okay, so now it's time to get down to the practicing, and all you need is some sort of practice sheet. You can use this template or make your own. You probably already have one that you like, but definitely customize it to your liking. And all I need to do is just to make a list, just to write things down. And then I have a little teeny column after the bigger columns, and where I put a check mark if it's something that I want to continue working on the next day. And then I just have each column 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is one practice day, another practice day. I'm not listing the days of the week in case I don't practice every day of the week. So, so you have your practice sheet, and you know what to practice because you have your database. And you're going to choose a couple of warm-ups, 2 or 3 or 4 warm-ups, 5 or 6 exercises, and then the pieces that you're working on and the problem spots. So make that list. Now, for time, how long? The way I used to practice, I used to just practice as long as I could on scales, and then as long as I could on an etude, then as long as I could on my piece. So basically that as long as I could was the point where I was mentally fatigued, I was bored, or I felt like I wasn't getting any better. So I think now what they've discovered is if you reach that point, your brain has already shut down. It has already stopped learning. That we learn, or we can tap into the that maximum learning potential of the brain by keeping material fresh and new. That the brain puts out more energy in learning when the material is new. So my suggestion is to make a list and then get a timer. Okay, so you can use an app on your phone, or you can have a kitchen timer, and then just set the timer for 3 or 4 minutes for all of your warm-ups and exercises. Set the timer for 5 to 7 minutes for all the spots in your repertoire. And then when the timer goes off, move on to the next one. Okay, and there should be enough things on your list that by the time you get down to the list, it's been about a half an hour or 45 minutes. Then if you practice longer than a half an hour or 45 minutes in the day, some of you practice 2 or 3 or 4 hours in a day, which is astonishing to me. But then go back to the top of the list and hit those things again. So by doing them frequently, okay, you're maximizing learning, but by doing them for shorter amounts of time with intense focus, using all the practice techniques, repetition, playing slowly, you according to the experts, you'll be learning faster. So you make your daily practice schedules, get your timer ready, you know what you're going to practice. And now the last thing I'm going to help you with is when to know how to determine when it's time to move on to the next piece. So that's the next sheet for you to download. It's another rubric. This is a sheet with the title Rubric for Advancement. And I created this based on criteria I use in teaching when deciding whether a student is ready to move on to the next piece. Now, my assumption is that the piece you've selected to work on is challenging. It's a little above your current level of playing, and it's not something that you could just sight read or learn to play in a short while. So if you are working through the Suzuki repertoire, then certainly each new piece is considered challenging. Now on the far left-hand side of the page, I listed the different components of playing music. We have rhythm, intonation, tempo, cleanliness, I mean, clearly executed articulations, well-coordinated finger action and bow changes. Okay, then we have fluency, and that's, how fluid your playing is. Are there many stops or hesitations? Tone, expression, and mental state. And by that I mean, how do you feel when you're playing? Do you feel confident? Do your fingers just know where to go? Or does it kind of always feel like a struggle? And then the columns at the top of the page progress from the very first stage of learning, which is basically, those early awkward periods of time where you're just barely making your way through, and then we progress all the way to polished performance. Now, a perfect performance, realistically is unattainable, except for an elite few, but a polished performance can be attained even in beginning playing. I mean, you can have a twinkle that meets, these criteria, where applicable. Now, I'm not going to read every single little square. You can do that on your own, but essentially this will provide objective goals for you as you're working toward polishing your repertoire. And at the bottom, I have the criteria for advancement. So the first one says minimally 3 checks in stage 3. Okay, and then we have ideally 4 or 5 checks in stage 3. And then lastly, polished playing, you have 1 or 2 checks in the polished column and, 4 or 5 checks in stage 3. So for example, and let's say you have in learning stage 1, under expression, I have no dynamic contrast. So let's say you're not quite equipped yet to wrangle your bow speed, pressure, and sounding point to create dynamics, but you can play through your piece with hardly any bubbles or hesitations. Okay, you have no rhythmic errors, and you're feeling mostly confident. It feels easy. You've played this enough. Your fingers know where to go. There might be a couple spots that are troublesome, but you enjoy playing it. You've reached a level where you can feel free. You can enjoy the music that you're making. And let's say you have, occasional scratches. Your articulations are somewhat clear and well executed. You sometimes hit other strings. Your shifts are not, well timed and a little sloppy, but you hit your arrival note. Your fingers are well prepared. 60 or 70% of the time, your finger action is a little slow on some fingers, maybe your fourth finger, and every now and then your bow and your fingers don't coincide well, but just sometimes. But mostly it's fine, okay? But maybe you still have a lot of intonation work to do, and playing it up to tempo is still too fast for you. So let's say this is where you are after 3 or 4 months of working on a piece, and now the question to ask yourself is, have I learned all that I can at this point? Okay, and if you feel like the items you have checked are not going to progress to the next level anytime soon, then move on to a different piece. Okay, but if you feel like you can move a few more check marks over, then keep working on it. You can always take a break and come back, a couple months later on down the road when your brain is fresh and enjoy, fresh perspective, and you'll find that, some things that felt hard before feel easier, and you can accomplish and learn even more from the piece. So I hope this video has helped you come up with a game plan for yourself, and that you don't feel, from this point on, you won't feel any anxiety towards organizing your practice, that you have some good tools now. So I'll look forward to hearing how this works for you.